Now,
Okay.
welcome to our preview of the Belk Bowl featuring Jeff Dantzler. Jeff, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you tell us how you see it, including any comments on the wild rumors of the last 2 weeks, if you have any. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff circulating, Greg, and I know we've all heard it in our joint media ventures between Bulldog Illustrated and Jeff Dantzler TV, various duties. You can see the 960 the ref sign behind me here. I'm about to start my local show here, but there's really been just such a pall put on what's happened at Georgia with that lost attack. It was just an incredibly disappointing year. To lose to Tech, that's always awful, and to get blown out by Florida and to lose to Steve Spurrier. And I think what's made this season so frustrating, then you factor in the situation with Todd Gurley, and when Georgia was on this year, Georgia looked as good as any team in the country, and I don't think there's a great team in the country. So I think a lot of Georgia fans, probably like me, probably like you, look at this and with this playoff starting up and say, boy, oh boy. If Georgia just could have won a couple more of those games, there's no reason the Bulldogs couldn't be in this right now. So I do think since the Tech game before the bowl, there were a couple of weeks of good news with Malcolm Mitchell and Jordan Jenkins and Leonard Floyd coming back and Colton Houston getting that sixth year. But then, of course, it's a big blow to lose Mike Bobo. He's done such a great job as an assistant coach, as a recruiter, and which kind of does take us to the bowl. I think, as is the case with 90% of bowls, it's just who's interested. And, we've seen Georgia lose its bowl game 3 of the last 4 years when the Bulldogs had superior talent. So it's kind of anybody's guess. But, would you rather win than lose? Absolutely. But I would trade a loss to Louisville for a guaranteed win over Tech or Auburn next year in 2 seconds.
Absolutely. I think Vance's Levy, Bulldog Illustrated publisher, has been able to get back with us. Let's see if we can hear him, and he has a question.
Greg, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear him, Jeff?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Hey, JD, do you want to chime in on any of all this scuttlebutt surrounding Bobo leaving and anything in Athens to report other than there's lots of chirping going on?
No, I think it's just lots of chirping and kind of back channels. I'm sure everybody out there has gotten a bunch of texts and, hey, what's going on? And it's funny with social media and the like, a lot of these stories really do catch fire. So, I don't know what's happening. I know the bottom line is when Georgia loses to Tech, everybody gets angry, everybody gets mad. I will say this for the coaching scenario with Will Friend leaving, I do think this is a spot where Georgia could promote from within and upgrade, actually. Dan Inman, who's been the graduate assistant there, is a tremendous, tremendous young coach. He has really helped when it's come to recruiting on campus. I know he had a big hand in getting the verbal commitment from Ben Cleveland, the big offensive tackle from up in Toccoa. Dan was a terrific player, an overachiever. He had that mean streak to him. So I have no idea who Georgia's going to hire as its offensive coordinator, but I do think as far as the O-line position goes, I think Dan Inman would be fantastic, and he's already on campus. So I do hope that Coach Rick decides to go in that direction.
Okay, well, and here's more of I think a question that you can tackle is, some of the scuttlebutt you're really hearing out there is Georgia committed? Are we willing to pay people? I mean, don't you think that, that is definitely something that has to be addressed, and it's more of a board, athletic board deal is, hey, the landscape's changing and it's costing more money, and are we prepared? I mean, don't you think that is a fair kind of question that you're hearing out there amongst, the fans and people we know?
Yeah, I think it is. It's such a matter of keeping up with the Joneses and the arms races when it comes to facilities, when it comes to salary and the like. And, it really has, for assistant coaches, good for them, but it really has, gotten out of hand in so many ways. But I think an example of what you're talking about is the odds are pretty good that Georgia's next offensive coordinator is going to cost them more than Mike Bobo did, but he's not going to have near the credentials that Mike had, and when you look at the records of the offense and when you look at his recruiting there. So that's just kind of the nature of the beast, and I'm sure there are a lot of folks wondering, well, are you being punished for loyalty? As a lot of longtime fans and employees of certain schools might feel. So there are a lot of factors out there. But the other big thing that's interesting right now, too, And I go back to the indoor facility. And I know that's something, especially Jeremy Pruitt pushing it, and Georgia basically missed a day when we had that cold snap before the Tech game. But Georgia kind of got caught in one of those spots when the Dogs built it, and I guess it got finished in the summer of 2010. I always liked Steve Spurrier at Florida. He said, well, we don't need an indoor place. It's sunshine down here in Florida. We don't ever need it. And that's fine if you want to go with that at Georgia, or if you want to build one, go out and do it right. Make it as good as any places. And what Georgia did was kind of go halfway and got stuck in the middle. Well, the bottom line is when Jeremy Pruitt comes in here, and here's a guy who's been at Alabama and at Florida State, two of Georgia's chief recruiting rivals, when he's talking about we use that against Georgia and some other things that go into that, to me, that's something, and I think that's where having some of these outside voices can come in and really help. But, the other thing, too, when you look at stuff like that, you talk about spending money to make money. And, again, I'll just go back to the indoor deal. Let's say if Georgia did drop, and I don't know how much this stuff costs, let's say another $20-25 million on a place. If that helps get you the next Todd Gurley and that gets you into the playoff, it's already paid for itself. So, it's an arms race out there, and you just can't get caught in the middle. And I think that's what's very important for Georgia to avoid. So
looking at, and I saw that you talked about the game before I could get back in a little bit, but I mean, what are fans and what do we need to see out of this Georgia team to feel like, with our cover in this last issue, I went with all players that were coming back, but what do you think is, a good indicator that we're heading in the right direction? Because, quite frankly, with those 3 losses that we couldn't have lost to anybody worse. It's hard to – a loss in this game is not good for Georgia and not good for Coach Rick.
Yeah, I just think the steam's out of it. I think I've watched a total of like 10 plays in all of football since the Tech game. There's just not a lot of interest in there. I was a little bit disappointed that Georgia only took 8 days of practice when you get 15, and I thought 6 or 7 sure could have been spent working on the triple option. I have a problem a lot of times, and we did this before the Michigan State game that we lost, with guys saying, well, this bowl's going to help us jumpstart into next year, because that means you're already looking ahead. I do think with Todd Grantham on the other sideline, that could serve as some motivation. But again, with these bowls, it's just a matter of who wants to be there. And let's face it, next year Georgia should be talented, but the Dogs have got a lot to replace. The schedule is going to be much, much tougher. And I'm going to throw one more out there at you. Just remember with what happened to Florida a year ago. I promise you, being down in South Georgia a good bit these last 2 days, there's another team in this state that's gunning for Georgia, and we better not think that Georgia Southern is going to be easy next year either.
Oh, you're so right about that. And well, let's talk a little bit about the Latin. I know you're wrapping up, or needing to wrap up. Right now, I guess. What's your take on the semifinal games? Are the Southern teams going to take care of business, or you see any upsets?
Well, I'd take Florida State in the 8 or the 9. That's for sure. I just think that's too good a bargain for a team that hadn't lost a game in 2 years, and that should be a shootout. Now that you're talking about Nick Saban and Urban Meyer with a month to prepare, it's pretty amazing. Saban's won 4 national titles, and Meyer in his last 10 years of coaching. I remember he sat out 2011. He's won 2 national titles, had 2 other undefeated seasons, and this is now a 3rd time he's had a team a game away from playing for the national championship. So these 2 guys are clearly the top 2 coaches in the business. It's Alabama and Ohio State, 2 of the great traditions out there. I think Alabama wins, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State kept it close because, again, keep in mind, as great a coach as Jim Tressel was with the success that SEC schools had against Ohio State, it's a different animal with Urban Meyer in there.
So are you off to Charlotte tonight?
Yeah, after the show, heading up and coming back, I guess, the morning of the 31st, and then off to Starkville after spending a lovely weekend in Jersey. Did get into Times Square for a half hour, and it's probably the most crowded it's ever been. So it was a whirlwind weekend with the Lady Dogs.
Well, I know you're not over Tech, but let's go get a W so we can go into the new year. with at least some positive mojo.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good. I'd trade a win over Louisville for a first down against Tech, though. I'll tell you that. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right.
Hey, Greg, do you have anything you wanted to say on the recruiting end or anything? I mean, I know you've kind of been sort of on top of that.
Well, recruiting is, as you might suspect, on hold right now. You know, if we're in the quiet period, that will not end. I think it's till the 15th of January. But Georgia has had some shakiness, especially with offensive linemen, with Bobo and Friend leaving. But if you know Rick's over the bowl today, if he comes back to Athens and hires somebody quickly and gets out and sees these recruits, I think they can call them once a week, and the recruits can call Georgia as much as they like. So they can communicate even though it's a quiet period. And then on the 15th, or I think that's today, that they can start back seeing them. Then they need to have everybody out and you know, solidifying this class. I wouldn't be surprised if we lose a commit or two. You know, when you have coaching staff turnover, that's going to happen. It also could happen that depending on who they hire, they could bring in a couple that we're not thinking about. So
now, you know, JD didn't touch much on the OC, but since you're on the thread the most, look, what's kind of what are people kind of hoping for us?
It's all over. Most, you know, all dogs are thinking about who they would be their favorite offensive coordinator, looking both outside the brotherhood of dogs, so to speak, and within. We've had all kinds of names mentioned. I don't know that anybody really has a good idea. You tell us. You're close to the powers that be. You should know.
Well, I wish I knew, but personally, I wouldn't mind either of these Cutcliffe guys. I think he runs a sound offense. I think they're smart, and when the moment works, you know, when the moment means the most, I think he comes up with plays that are sensible. And I think, you know, that's one thing that I am looking forward to, you know, and granted, I was a big Bobo fan and watched the whole press conference with he and his family, really cool. I mean, I think he'll do very well out there because he's being left with a good situation. I mean, they're on the up, but I also do kind of look forward to seeing what a new coordinator will bring as far as some sort of identity. I've said it a bunch. Both Rick and Bobo's offense was hell in between the 20s. But when you get to those tough yardage situations that we've seen for 14 years, it still seems like we didn't quite know what we wanted to do in those big moments. I mean, even when, you know, we could go back to the South Carolina game. Of course, it's, you know, how did Gurley not get the ball? Well, I happened to watch that the other day, and would you believe the touchdown before that? Thankfully, we scored, but 2 out of the 3 plays on that drive where we were down there on the goal line, we gave the ball to Sonny Michel in a power eye, and then we scored with the fullback. Gurley wasn't on the field on one play, and we used him as the decoy on the other. So, you know, I like to see whoever we get. I'd like to see our offense be a little bit more of looking at your personnel and really much like Kiffin did with their offense. People have complained through the years, and I think rightfully complained, that we don't always incorporate our best players. You know, it's just kind of we run our plays, and the best players on the field at that point, great. If not, then, you know, that's why they have depth. And I mean, you know, I have credence in that. If you're a kid wanting to show your NFL and play in a pro style offense, but sometimes I'd like to see the best players on the field as much as possible. What do you think?
I don't think you're going to see much new, no matter who he hires. Mike Bobo was running Rick's offense that he brought from Florida State, and I think whoever he hires is going to run it as well. And I can't imagine Mark Rick saying, "Oh, I need to change." I mean, I just don't see that. But hopefully, whoever, they have a legendarily big playbook. So a lot of it depends on how you call those plays, because if their playbook is as extensive as they say it is, then it's got all kinds of things in it. So the offensive coordinator within that system ought to be able to bring a different look to the offense. And the thing about personnel is that doesn't have anything to do with Rick. So hopefully that. The new coordinator will have his stud running back on the field when he needs 2 yards to beat South Carolina, or a yard, or whatever it was.
But I agree and disagree with you there, because you've seen what a new coordinator in Pruitt has come in, and he's kind of, I think, helped change some things for the good by
no doubt,
by questioning why are we doing it this way. So, and I think that's where a coordinator, even on offense, and I do agree with you that but if you look at Kiffin, and they were running the pro style offense at Alabama, but Kiffin has definitely came in and kind of carved out his own niche of the style. So I'm optimistic that something lacked. Scores lots of points and lots of yards. I think we'd all agree that times to much for us being baffled by it. All right.
Okay. Well, we're gonna start these up and try to do some on a more regular basis like we have in the past, and see how it goes. Hope everyone enjoyed Jeff's comments on this one, and we'll be back soon. Thanks, Vance.
See ya. All right, everybody.